Well, when you go outside of an insurance company, there is not that rigid structure. So you can go out, you can learn stuff, you can build things that work, and you can do that on the job without someone saying, well, you need to be SAS certified and we're going to wait maybe a year or two for your rotation. This is your chance.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Frank Chang. I am the head of safety and insurance analytics at Uber, which means I have data scientists, data analysts, and actuaries, and also some business intelligence professionals reporting to me. We do everything that's related to numbers for safety and insurance. We try to build models for rare events, and the actuaries take numbers and turn them into stories and turn stories into numbers.
Awesome. Let me dig more into that. But first, I do want to get a sense of like your overall job and responsibilities. So I used to be a very frequent Uber passenger, less nowadays. But if I'm sitting in an Uber, what would I notice that you and your team have done to make my ride safer?
Yeah, in particular, a lot of the safety features. So for example, the safety center that you see in the app, which you can find at the bottom, the SOS button that's in the safety center, and a few of the newer features we've launched. Some rides actually have a PIN confirmation where you can confirm the PIN with the driver to make sure that you have the right driver. For COVID, there are photos with mask detection to see if folks are wearing their masks, which is required in all Ubers. And all these products were developed by what you would call a tech team at Uber. And a tech team consists of a product manager, an engineer, and often a data scientist or data analyst, depending on what you're building. For machine learning models, you have a data scientist to look at the proper building, both offline testing and the usual things in deployment. And for features such as a SOS button, for example, you may have a data analyst analyze whether or not you get more user recognition by where you place it. So they're doing A/B tests, for example, on the app. Got
it. So Frank, that is really interesting. And you're right. I have noticed the SOS button. I haven't noticed all the other features in the safety center. So that's interesting. And you mentioned like data scientists, product managers, engineers. You didn't mention any actuaries. So I'm curious, what do they do in your team?
The actuaries work in insurance. They have actually helped, as they can serve as a data analyst in a pinch. So some of my actuaries have done A/B test results. They've run experiments and they've done readouts, in particular for crash detection, for example, which is something that we have at Uber. They did results to see if we had a proactive outreach for crash detection way back when we experimented in 2018. If there were impacts to the way claims were reported, claims were handled, claim severity. So actuaries do get involved occasionally there. But to answer your question, the actuary's main duty is to do pricing and reserving, which is a little different than what you would see at a carrier. For pricing, it is really creating a price for insurance that has not been sold or there's no ready data for analysis. And so the pricing team does look at things like occupational accident and what we estimate that would cost on a either per trip or per mile basis. They look at insurance in countries where there hasn't been ride sharing before. So how do we estimate what the cost per mile there is? For reserving, we do have some self-retained risk, and they estimate how much the cost of that risk is. And they do quarterly reserving reviews with our CFO to understand where the reserves should be. So that's very traditional. There's also actuarial data. There's a few smaller sort of functions within actuarial. There's actuarial data, which is critical, but it's a small team that makes sure that we have all the data we need to do the pricing and reserving. We have some financial operations, so those that kind of estimate how much premium we're going to pay. So they work closely with our financial planning and analysis partners, as well as accounting, to do forecasts.
Got it.
We also have a claims actuarial team that looks at claims handling for both within Uber and with our insurance partners to see if there are opportunities for improvement as well.
Got it. So they're looking for insights in claims handling. Are they building models as well?
They do build models. For example, we have to do internal staffing to handle all the claim volume that comes in. So that support staff estimation and forecast is done by that team. They also do some A/B testing as well on claims tools that we use internally.
And look, if I looked at if I sort of dig into your career path, especially at Uber, you made your way up from Director of Actuarial Services, I see that, to Director of Insurance and Safety, to the Head of Safety and Insurance Analytics. So how did you manage to take on bigger and bigger roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you have to be intellectually curious. And I've said this before to other actuaries that I've talked to. I feel that the actuarial exams are a good preparation for a wide variety of subjects. We can always ask, why do we need to learn regulation on our exams? There's all these tests on both like regulatory calculations, regulatory mechanics, regulatory bodies. There's some tort law in some of, I think it's in the modules now. And you read these things and you wonder, why do you really need this to be a good actuary? I mean, it's just cultural context, right? But if you dig into that, you then become an insurance professional. And the way that you leverage that is that not everyone else is an insurance professional. When you leave an insurance company, folks don't really understand insurance. In particular, some of these insurtechs, they don't hire folks from insurance. They might hire a broker and they say, that's it, this is our insurance guy. And actuaries actually know a lot more about the mechanics, about at least the theory of how insurance works and is regulated. And they're well placed to become experts. I would say, treat yourself as an insurance professional and folks will come to you and ask questions. And they're going to see if you're able to find the truth and get to the bottom of things. And if you can answer those questions, you get more and more. Same on the data science side. I would say also, I found an opportunity both at Google before Uber and at Uber to answer a lot of questions that actuaries don't get posed. Many insurance companies will say you need SAS to be a predictive modeler. And a lot of actuaries are taking R seminars or SAS seminars on the side because they want to get into the space. Well, when you go outside of an insurance company, there is not that rigid structure. So you can go out, you can learn stuff, you can build things that work, and you can do that on the job without someone saying, well, you need to be SAS certified and we'll wait maybe a year or two for your rotation. This is your chance within the confines of the professional standards, of course. But I would say both the insurance and data science aspects of my knowledge base improved because folks were asking questions saying, can you solve this? Can you solve that? You have the competitive advantage here. So please go figure this out. And from that, I was able to get into Uber, become an actuarial director, and I was leading actuarial the entire time. In 2017, insurance and safety merged, and I was able to credibly talk about safety. I think we deal with rare events all the time in actuarial, and not very many data scientists out there are used to it. They don't know the volume of data required. They don't know the variance. They don't know the difference in errors. They don't have the thought of like, how do you cut your data so you have homogeneity and credibility at the same time? And so I would say that's how I expanded into safety.
Got it. Thank you, Frank. So I think what you're saying is play to your strengths. We have this very deep knowledge in insurance, and that is sought after outside of the insurance industry, which is great. And then you also taught yourself the data science skill set.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you're suggesting actuaries need to make time for that. Do you see actuaries actually doing that, teaching themselves the data science skill set successfully?
I do. In fact, I would say all the actuaries under me do have at least open source software skills. I did teach myself Python at Uber, and I'm at a fairly ripe age. I started at Uber when I turned 40. So it's never too late. And I learned Python from scratch there. R did help, other programming skills did help, but we shifted away from VBA to more open source software. And because there's so much R and Python code now, a new actuary comes on, they just pick it up by modifying the code that exists. That's the easiest way to learn, and then eventually they build on it.
That's great. And we do see lots of individual actuaries really taking this into their own hands. Do you feel like the CAS needs to do more? What are your thoughts there? Because I know you're on the board.
Yeah, I do feel like we need to do a little more. I think the CISPA is a great step in the right direction. I think there are folks who are very interested in taking the CISPA and learning the skills there. But how much do we see insurers moving along, right? If we look back and we think, how long did it take to adopt even Excel, for example, as a tool? And now everyone uses Excel. Well, okay, how long is it going to take before we start adopting R and Python into our regular work? And what is our path on workflows? I think in professionalism for the individual contributor, we should talk about things like tools that you use. We should talk about ETL, extract, transform, load. And so we don't have these massive data processes where we say, we go into Microsoft Access, we run a query, we put in Excel, and then we do some pivot table and some crazy thing, and then we send it to another Excel sheet, and then we do a VLOOKUP on that. You're like, gosh, I could do that in Python in one worksheet, right? and so having skills there, which are basic data munging skills, is something maybe we could like encourage, or we could have some more thoughts on. I think CISPA is a step in that direction.
Great, great. And yeah, that's the Certified Specialist in Predictive Analytics, right? The credential that we have through ICAS. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Jessica.
Terrific, terrific. No, that's great. So we've talked about the insurance knowledge being really key. We've talked about the data science knowledge. How about problem solving? I was looking back at some of your other interviews, and I think you were saying in 2007 you interviewed like 1,000 actuaries. You thought that a lot of them just wanted a very routine role, right? So give me an updated, what do you see now in 2020?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So problem solving is an important skill. I think folks that have worked in consulting have done this, and there are folks in consulting that enjoy it, right? They enjoy new problems. You can tell that they enjoy new challenges. They enjoy anything that helps them learn. And a lot of times when I interview, I'm looking for those types of skills. We don't have a set routine. We do have regular reserving, for example, but the reserving is always changing. You may have heard last year we had something called Uber Works, which was a way to, get workforce for large events, for example, and build that into an app. And that was really kind of an interesting product. And there was some work comp risk, for example. But then all of a sudden we need to learn about that contingent, work comp liability. How do we set up insurance for that? And how do we reserve for that? And so the problems are always changing, which is why the actuaries I'm looking for need to be able to think outside the box and really understand the type of insurance they're reserving for or their pricing, and kind of get their hands wet and say, how do I get to an answer that may not be perfect, because none of the actuaries' answers are going to be perfect. We're always going to say, cover ourselves with certain ASOPs and say there's variability, there's things you can't predict. But you need to get to an answer. You need to go to a business partner and say, here's my best guess, and this is what I would do. And so folks who can do that versus taking a routine process and running it forward, those are the folks that I'm looking for when I interview.
Got it.
And I would say we should encourage that as well. I think in the CAS, we should look at new problems, interesting problems. We have talks about it. We talk about drones. We talk about marijuana. We talk about all these new things, self-driving cars, and how do we come up with insurance and what would that look like? I would love for more people to think about it and get involved.
Okay. And then continuing on, I think you've had a lot of, talking about actuaries in your team and hiring, I know you've had a lot of success in really nurturing actuaries who then go on to other areas within Silicon Valley, like Lyft and Airbnb. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think that actuaries who come are looking to be challenged. And so you have to find a balance between giving them enough challenge to grow and putting some safeguards in so that if they fail, they don't fail too bad. So that's sort of the generic answer. In specific cases, I think Max Feldman, who is now the head of insurance at Lyft, and Sam Brunel at Airbnb, they did have qualities that they had which were easy to bring out. I think Max was a masterful business partner, stakeholder manager, as well as just a strong communicator, very smooth and polished and good at negotiation. So I sent him to Colombia to talk to the Colombian actuaries. He regularly talked to ICAS, Sura, some of our insurance partners in international, and he came away looking very polished and very expert. So he got more and more opportunities like that, which I think helped him move from being a lead actuary to head of insurance at Lyft. I'm sure Lyft gave him plenty of opportunities as well to flex his communication and negotiation skills. For Airbnb, Sam Burnell was an amazing consultant. So we threw a whole variety of things for him to do. And I think that Airbnb's practice is more nascent. I think their insurance is maybe they were just a few years behind us, but they've built up very quickly. And so when they need an actuary and they came to him, he was ready. He had all the skills necessary. He could talk to legal, he could talk to finance. He knew those conversations. He knew what all the functions were. That's actually important to like corporate intelligence, like knowing how a corporation works. So he learned all of those skills and was able to be successful at Airbnb.
And you talk a lot about the business skills, which it sounds like they really learned it on the job. So I'm wondering, what role do you think the CAS, if any, has to play in terms of developing business skills?
I do think that I learned a lot from the CAS sessions. A lot of the soft skills, however, I did learn at Google, for example. They had classes, internal classes, some trainings at Uber as well for managers. And where the CAS can help is on the management track, focusing on these soft skills. As a manager, you're doing everything. You're doing business partner management. You're doing negotiation. Maybe not in the negotiation you think of at a used car sales lot, but you are negotiating against your business partners as to what you can accomplish, how much you can achieve, what you're going to work on, what your team's going to own. And so those skills actually become critical as you move up the ladder. And these are things I would love to see. I would love to see like a manager session, like, at an annual meeting where they say, these are the, management 101 skills, management 201 skills, and just going all the way up to executive. We've talked on the board about getting more actuaries into executive positions, and I think we can support that.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Frank. Thank you. Now, let me actually go back to the beginning of your career, because you've had a very interesting and varied path to the actuarial career. So you did a PhD in math, and you also studied music and Chinese. Tell me about that. And then I think your first job was at Esurance. So how did that work?
Yeah, that's this is hope for all the career changers and late bloomers out there. So I got a PhD in math, and I'll be completely honest. My parents pushed me up to it. I'm the oldest child. My parents,
okay.
My parents both had PhDs. It was a very typical, Taiwanese American household where they're just like, we both have PhDs. This is the path that we know. Son, you need to go get a PhD. And so I did. By hook or by crook, I finally got one. And and when I graduated, I was trying to find a job. And oh my goodness, that was really difficult because now you have this huge academic degree. Most folks think of you as an academic. You don't have a whole lot of communication skills. You make things way too technical because you're used to defending your thesis or arguing with your advisor. And so that was actually quite difficult. I think communication was the biggest barrier to me finding a job immediately after getting a PhD. I could have found an academic job, but I wasn't willing to move out of California yet. So so I was a stay-at-home dad, and I found work at the Motley Fool, monitoring their online discussion boards. And it was, I would say, the only pay that they gave was at the time free subscriptions to all their newsletters, which I consumed voraciously. And so I got into stocks, and that actually was how I discovered the actuarial profession. So the stocks I covered were financial and insurance stocks. And so I read a lot of these reports, and they talk about actuaries, and they had these numbers shaped like triangles, and they talked about how they're projecting the future. I said, wow, that's really interesting. Let me see if I can learn more about this. And as you were alluding to, I do have a degree in music. So I taught piano lessons while I was a stay-at-home dad, and I exchanged lessons for childcare. So I didn't take any money, and I used the time that folks would watch my kids to learn more about insurance companies, to actually study for the first few actuarial exams. I took exams 1 and 2, and as you noted, I found a job at Esurance with 2 exams under my belt.
Wow, that's really scrappy. Good for you.
Well, I could work like teaching Chinese in there or something, but
I read some of the posts that you have in Motley Fool. You seem to know a lot about insurance. Like, I guess you taught yourself.
I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of reading. That's amazing that you found those posts. Wow, that's like a blast from the past. I read all the 10Ks, all the 10Qs. I read a bunch of books. The Motley Fool recommended, and you can still find it on Amazon, I think, recommended books for like basic, intermediate, advanced, although they had it written like elementary school, middle school, high school. So I read One Up on Wall Street. I read The Davis Dynasty, which is about the Shelby Davis who invested in insurance. There was a lot of stuff about Jack Byrne, who Warren Buffett calls the Babe Ruth of insurance, for example. So yeah, I did a lot of studying about the industry before diving in. But I did take a few exams, got to Esurance. I took a whole bunch of exams there, and eventually landed at Fireman's Fund, which I credit with teaching me all sorts of insurance at the ground level.
Got it. So in terms of really our CAS members learning more about the industry and learning more about insurance, which is, something you're advocating, is that what you would recommend? Like read the books, or like what can they actually do on the job to really learn more about the business?
That's a great question. I'm going to start with the folks who work at carriers, because I think that's how I came up, and that's near and dear to my heart. For those at insurance carriers, learn what you're selling if you're in pricing, learn what you're reserving for, read the policies, figure out what the endorsements are. A lot of times there's stuff that's hidden that you don't know. How's the insurance policy written? Befriending your stakeholders. I was able to go on ride-alongs to MGAs with I guess it was a marketing team and marketing and sales team at Fireman's Fund. And so just make friends within other departments and really learn how that insurance company works. And that's on the carrier side. And I think you can learn a lot just from that without going to books. For consultants, now, I was never a consultant, but I think that if you were a consultant, get yourself out there, continue to network. Don't network just within your consultancy. You have clients, and those clients may have friends. And if you get enough of a network, You're going to be able to touch different parts of the industry that folks at carriers, myself, or others would just not see, right? You get to actually talk to, so how does this work? You're out with a broker, or you're out with someone else that you're working with, and you say, well, what's your piece of the puzzle look like?
I do want to ask you if you have any book recommendations, and you've given me some, right? Jack Byrne, Shelby Davis. I think those are great. I was having a look at your Motley Fool profile again from a long time ago. I think you recommended The Now Habit. I actually borrowed it from the library. Should I read it?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Every exam taker out there should read The Now Habit.
Awesome. Okay.
It's by Dr. Neil Fiore, who's a PhD. I think he's at Berkeley here. It's a fantastic book, very easy reading, very easily listening if you get the audiobook. A few things I want to say about that book. The unschedule is a good technique, but anyone who has a problem with procrastination, and I think that is everyone, because there's always one or two things that each person has that they say, I really don't want to get to that, or I'm not going to start that. And The Now Habit is a fantastic book for that. And why I recommend to exam takers is clearly, the people who are taking exams have the cleanest apartments, or they have the best homemade bread, because they're just trying to find things to do that is not studying for exams. And The Now Habit will really help you buckle down, scheduling breaks instead of scheduling time. So if I said to you right now, at 11 o'clock, I am going to take a break. That gives me 49 minutes to get whatever I'm doing right now done. And so you work as if you have maybe like an artificial deadline. So when you take a break, you take an actual break, because you've gotten something done and you can relax and not think about whatever you were doing. Anyway, that's a good book. A few other books. I would say Getting More by Stuart Diamond is one that I recommend a lot. And that's a book that's about negotiation, but it isn't like the old, BAFTA, best alternative to a negotiated BATNA, sorry, best alternative to a negotiated agreement type negotiation book. It is one that talks about understanding who your counterparty is, figuring out what the pictures are in their head. I'd say that is a really good book. It's not just about hard negotiation, but about getting more. And the examples in the book are quite colorful. It's an easy read as well. And I'd read that a few times. I would say Crucial Conversations on Communication. That's a very good book as well, on not treating folks you're talking to as if they're villains, or treating yourself as a victim when you go into a hard conversation. And as actuaries, I feel like we do shy away from hard conversations. For the data analysts, data scientists, and actuaries, we just want to be about the numbers. And we don't want it to be about other things where we're not an expert. So I'd say Crucial Conversations is a must read. The HBR Guide to Office Politics is also an important read. And it, very much like the Getting More is not really a negotiation book, but it is. The HBR Guide to Office Politics is not a book about politics, but about how to survive at work, honestly. How to deal with difficult situations, how to carry yourself as a leader, how to be optimistic, how to respond to things. And it's a lot of things that you kind of learn on the job, but it's all in one book. It's fantastic.
Great. This is a terrific list. Thank you, Frank. I'm a big fan of HBR, but I didn't know they had a guide to office politics, so thanks.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon, I think, for 14 or 15 bucks. It's pretty good.
Perfect. Thank you. And now I want to turn it back to the CAS. We recently launched our new Envision Future and our 3-year plan, which you're well aware of, being on our board. And our Envision Future says that CAS members are sought after globally for their insights and ability to apply analytics to solve insurance and risk management problems. So I want to get your take on our Vision Future, and what things you feel we need to overcome at the CAS to really make sure we're heading towards our Envision Future.
That's a great question. I'll start by saying I recently read a paper. I think it was also a Harvard Business School paper about Ron Johnson, who is a fascinating guy. And I'll tie this back to the CAS, I promise. So Ron Johnson was the brainchild behind like Target, all of the Apple stores. He worked directly with Steve Jobs to get all the Apple stores out. So he was seen as a retail genius. And JCPenney, which was struggling at the time, had brought him in, and he lasted 18 months. And I think that he himself would say part of the mistakes was he tried to move too fast, and he disenfranchised his core customer, the people who look forward to coupons, the people who look forward to sales and deals. At the very beginning, he said, we're not going to do sales anymore. We're going to remove that from our vocabulary. Everything's just going to be everyday low prices. And it didn't work. And I think with the CAS, some of the things we need to do is, one, we need to make sure that we are still the society that supports the folks that are doing traditional pricing and reserving. We cannot lose our support for that important function. We are the actuarial society, and that's core actuarial work. So we need to manage that while also being able to attract new customers, right? The same way that we would think of Ron Johnson trying to do. And we already have some. You heard Elon Musk talk in his earnings call about how much he likes actuaries. My manager in an interview said, my first hire was a senior actuary. And so you see more and more folks demanding actuaries in their jobs. So how do we support that? How do we encourage both companies that are not thinking about actuaries to think about hiring an actuary? How do we encourage actuaries to learn the skills needed for those slots? And those are things that may not just be data science. It may be a hodgepodge, and it may look very difficult where we say, are we going to be frenetic? Are we going to, try to do both banking and data science and data analytics and operations research and everything at the same time? Are we going to focus on a few things? And so in order for us to succeed, we need to have a strategy for how we do that expansion. What is that expansion about? What are the analytical skills we're going to teach first? Where we have I like to call it the CISPA for short. Where we have the CISPA through the CAS Institute, do we leverage that and make that into a more scalable set of exams that help actuaries prepare for these jobs? And are we working at the same time with recruiters, big recruiters like D.W. Simpson, Ezra Penland, who may know about these positions? Or are we just doing our research, for example, and going out there to look at these job postings, aggregate them, and figure out what the industry wants? Are we working on that side, on the demand side, to generate more and more demand? Those are some of the things we have to overcome that we haven't thought about in the past.
Great. Yeah, Frank, and you're right. We've always very much focused on the supply side and really making sure our actuaries have the right set of skills. But yes, the demand side we have somewhat neglected. So I think these are some great ideas to push us forward. Okay. So look, those are all my questions. This has been fascinating, Frank. You have very easy as well. You have like a really fascinating background and extreme. There's a lot in that head of yours, Frank. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Jessica.